I am Nathan Carter, and this is the story of the day I realized I never truly belonged to my family. I attended my brother Evan Carter's wedding with a simple intention to congratulate him, smile for a few photos, and play the role of the dutiful older brother, as I always had. The wedding was held at Crystal Lake Resort, a luxurious lakeside retreat by Lake Tahoe, Nevada, renowned for its vibrant flower gardens and opulent banquet hall with soaring glass ceilings. I didn't come to draw attention or make the day about me. It was Evan's day, and I had long accepted that I wasn't the cherished son in the family, but I never expected they could be so cold as to make my heart feel pierced. Before diving into the story, comment where you're watching from, and don't forget to subscribe so you won't miss the latest stories. As my car pulled up to the main entrance, a staff member in a black suit stepped forward to open the door. I took a deep breath, adjusted my dark blue suit, the only outfit I deemed formal enough for the occasion, and stepped out. I didn't want to stand out, just blend into the joyous atmosphere of the wedding. But the moment I entered the main hall, everything changed. The banquet hall unfolded before me, shimmering with polished marble floors, sparkling crystal chandeliers, and the faint scent of wedding flowers, likely lilies, lingering in the air. Soft violin music played from a corner of the room. I headed straight to the reception table, where a young woman, with a radiant smile, was checking the guest list. "Your name, sir?" she asked, her voice gentle. "Nathan Carter," I replied softly, my voice clear. Her smile faltered, just for a moment, but enough to send a chill down my spine. She quickly flipped through the list, her fingers moving faster than usual. Then she stopped, her eyes narrowing slightly, before she looked up. "Ah, here it is," she said, her tone trying to sound natural. "You're assigned to the hallway area, near the coat check." I blinked, thinking I misheard. "Sorry, where?" I asked, my voice trembling slightly. She repeated, this time softer, as if trying to soothe. "Just outside the banquet hall, near the coat check, sir." I glanced at the seating chart beside her. A large board, with elegant handwritten names. My parents, Margaret and Henry Carter, were listed at the main table, right by the stage, where the lights shone brightest. Evan's close friends, the bride's colleagues, all had seats inside, under the glow of the chandelier. My name wasn't on the main board. I turned back to the receptionist, trying to keep my voice steady. "There must be a mistake. I'm the groom's brother." She smiled, but it was forced, as if she was embarrassed for me. "I'm afraid there's no mistake, sir. This is the seat assigned to you." My chest burned, like a small fire smoldering inside. I told myself maybe the hall was full, or this was just a last-minute error. But then I saw my mother through the glass door, standing beside Evan, in a corner of the hall. She was adjusting his tie, both of them beaming, embracing, like nothing in the world mattered more. Evan in his sleek black tuxedo looked like a star. I stood here, just a few meters away, but it felt like I'd been pushed into another world. I walked out to the hallway, my leather shoes clicking softly on the cold stone floor. The air here was different. No scent of wedding flowers, no crystal chandelier glow, just silence, and the chill of the air conditioning. I sat on a velvet upholstered chair by a window, looking out at Lake Tahoe sparkling under the sunlight. In my hand was the place card.
Yep.
Nathan Carter, Table H, hallway area. The handwriting was elegant, but to me it felt like a stab. I twirled the card in my hand, my palm slightly damp. I had hoped, just this once, that my family would see me as part of them. But clearly, they never did. I recalled a recent meeting with Evan, when he bragged about this wedding. He talked about the lavish details, the custom-designed menu, the famous band, and even the engagement ring worth a fortune. Then he looked at me, flashing a half-smile. "You'd never pull off something this big, would you, Nathan?" I had laughed it off, thinking it was just a tease. I stepped into the banquet hall, where the crystal chandeliers still sparkled and the guests' laughter rang like an endless melody. My mother, Margaret Carter, stood beside Evan, adjusting his tie. Evan, in his glossy black tuxedo, beamed as if the world revolved around him. I took a deep breath, approached, and tried to keep my voice calm. "Mom, can I talk to you for a moment?" I asked, my voice soft but clear. She didn't even look at me. "Not now, Nathan," she said, her eyes fixed on Evan. "Can't you see I'm busy?" I bit my lip, trying to suppress the burning in my chest. "Just a minute, Mom," I said, my voice trembling slightly. She sighed, clearly annoyed, but finally stepped aside. Evan stood still, his eyes on me with a smile that was anything but friendly. "What's so important, big brother?" he asked, his tone sweet but laced with sarcasm. I took another breath, keeping my voice steady. "I'm seated in the hallway," I said, looking directly at Mom, "near the coat check." She shrugged, as if it wasn't worth her concern. We had to prioritize close family, Nathan. You know that. I clenched my fists, my nails digging into my palms. I am close family, I replied, my voice rising slightly. I'm the groom's brother. Mom gave a small, cold laugh that made me shiver. Oh, don't make a fuss, Nathan, she said. Evan chimed in, his eyes glinting as if he found it amusing. Probably just a mix-up, bro. Weddings are hectic. No one meant it. His voice was sweet as sugar, but his eyes told a different story. I looked back at Mom, hoping for even a hint of hesitation, a sign she saw this was wrong. But she just sighed. Don't ruin Evan's big day, Nathan. You should be grateful you were invited. The word grateful lodged in my throat, like a stone. Grateful for being treated like an outsider in my own family. Grateful for sitting by the coat check. Before I could respond, my father, Henry Carter, approached. He held a glass of wine, his voice low as if to diffuse the situation. It's just a seat, son, he said, eyes on the floor. Don't make a big deal out of it. I stood still, the anger smoldering inside, not exploding but deeper, colder. I forced a hollow smile and turned away without another word. They thought I'd quietly accept it, as I always had, but this time, I wasn't sure I could. I walked slowly back to the hallway, my leather shoes echoing softly on the cold marble floor. The air here was heavy, faintly carrying the scent of wedding flowers from the banquet hall, but something felt out of place, like me. I stopped at a corner of the hallway, still holding the place card. Nathan Carter, Table H, hallway area. The elegant handwriting felt like another stab. I had hoped, just once, that my family would see me as part of them, but clearly, they never did. A soft click sounded from the banquet hall door. Nathan Evans' voice called, light as a greeting, but enough to make me pause. I turned. He stood there, arms crossed, his smile devoid of warmth. You mad? He asked, his tone lacking genuine care. Over the seating, I gave a dry laugh, a hollow sound. I'm not mad, I said. I'm disappointed. Evan tilted his head, his eyes glinting as if he'd heard a joke. You're always so sensitive. It's just a seat, Nathan. Who cares? I bit the inside of my cheek, keeping my voice even. It's not the seat, Evan. It's how this family treats me. Always has. He shrugged, as if my words weren't worth his time. So what? You still showed up, put on a nice suit, still hoping to be noticed. He stepped closer, lowering his voice, so only I could hear. You're desperate for their approval, Nathan. It's pathetic. I looked straight into his eyes, unflinching. No, Evan. Pathetic is when you have to step on others, just to feel loved. My words made Evan freeze, just for a split second, but then he broke the silence with a loud laugh, as if nothing mattered. You really know how to ruin the vibe. As always, he said, then turned and walked away, leaving me standing alone in the quiet hallway. My hand clenched the place card, feeling like something vital had been stripped away, a part of me I'd been trying to hold on to. But in that moment, a strange clarity began to form within me. If they'd decided I didn't belong, maybe I didn't need to keep trying anymore. Through the glass door, I saw Mom and Evan, laughing joyfully with guests in the banquet hall, the crystal chandeliers, glowing above them, illuminating everything like shining stars. And me. I stood here, in the cold darkness of the hallway, pushed to the sidelines of this big day. The feeling didn't spark immediate anger, but a smoldering fire, burning deep within. It pulled me back to an old memory, sharp and vivid, as if it had just happened, making my heart tighten with an indescribable pain. 3 years ago, I returned home to Portland, Oregon, for Thanksgiving. Evan wasn't there, off traveling with his new girlfriend in California. The family's old wooden house, with the faint smell of baked pies and warm light from the fireplace, felt strangely peaceful, without Evan's loud voice and overpowering presence. Mom, Margaret Carter, asked me to go to my old room, to find some family photos for a memory album. Can you look for them, Nathan? She said, her voice unusually gentle. I nodded, feeling a flicker of warmth at being entrusted with a task that made me feel valued, even if briefly. My old room hadn't changed, frozen in time. The small bed by the window, a bookshelf full of technical manuals, and a few high school photos, mostly of me standing alone, with a forced smile. I rummaged through drawers, finding the photo box as Mom requested. But then my eyes landed on a small drawer, in Mom's old vanity table, tucked in a corner of the room. Something urged me to open it. Inside was a light brown leather letterbox, sitting quietly as if guarding a secret. I opened the box, revealing neatly stacked letters, written in Mom's careful, elegant handwriting. I flipped open the first letter, not thinking much, until I read Evan's first day of kindergarten. He didn't cry. He turned, waved at me, and ran into class like a brave little doll. I moved to the next. Evan loves the pasta I make on Thursday nights. Then another. Evan used to be scared of thunder, but now he's so much braver. Letter after letter, year after year, all about Evan, his small moments, his likes, his joys, recorded like a private memoir for him. My heart pounded, and I flipped faster, as if trying to prove that somewhere in these lines I existed too. But there was nothing. Not a single line, not a sentence, not even the name Nathan. I gripped the letters, my knuckles white, my breathing heavy. When Mom walked into the room, I was still sitting motionless on the floor, the letterbox open before me. "You wrote all these about Evan?" I asked, my voice small but icy. She looked at the box, then smiled lightly, as if it was no big deal. I had to record everything, so Evan wouldn't feel forgotten. "He's sensitive, you know," she said, her tone calm. I bit my lip, a sharp pain spreading. "What about me, Mom?" I asked, my voice almost a whisper, afraid of the answer. She looked at me, her gaze unwavering. "You've always been independent, Nathan. You didn't need to be written down to be remembered." I nodded, saying nothing more, but inside, a part of me shattered. A piece of my childhood, a piece of my hope, and the part of me that longed for Mom's recognition, all vanished in that moment. I left the room, carrying a pain I didn't dare voice, as I'd learned to hide everything over the years. This time, I didn't feel sadness like before. Something was different, as if I was stepping out from the shadow my family had cast over me for years. I stood tall, still holding the place card, my heart torn between memory and the present. I stood in the hallway corner, my arms limp, the place card reading Nathan Carter, Table H, hallway area, now crumpled in my suit pocket. The memory of Mom's letterbox still clawed at my mind, like an old wound reopened. Through the glass door, the chandeliers in the banquet hall sparkled, laughter and violin music echoing, but I felt like a ghost, cast to the sidelines of this big day. Evan's words and Mom's cold gaze made me face a painful truth. I never truly belonged to this family. But as I sank into my tangled thoughts, a low voice cut through. "Nathan." I startled, turning around. It was Anna Brooks, Evan's bride, standing at the banquet hall door. Her stunning wedding gown hugged her figure, but her eyes betrayed attention, as if she carried an invisible burden. She stepped forward, her high heels clicking softly on the marble floor. "Why are you out here alone?" she asked, her voice soft but full of concern. I hesitated, not wanting to reveal my pain. "They seated me in the hallway," I replied briefly, pointing to the small table near the coat check. Anna frowned, her eyes narrowing, as if trying to comprehend. "The hallway? You mean, out here?" I nodded, forcing a weak smile. "Guess the banquet hall ran out of space," I said. But both of us knew that wasn't true. Anna stood still, clutching the edge of her gown. She took a deep breath, then said, her voice lower, "Nathan, can I ask you something?" I looked at her, sensing the seriousness in her tone. "Of course," I replied. She hesitated, her eyes darting to the banquet hall, where Evan was laughing with guests. "Evan, has he ever done anything that made you feel off?" she asked, her voice trembling slightly. I furrowed my brow, unsure what she meant. "Off how?" I asked. Anna pulled her phone from a small pouch on her gown, glanced at the screen, then shook her head. "Lately, he's controlling everything. Secretive. There are things he doesn't want me to know. I'm starting to think something's not right." I stood still, her words stirring a familiar feeling. Evan always knew how to manipulate people. Mom, Dad, even me. But I'd never spoken up, partly to avoid trouble, partly because I was used to being brushed aside. Before I could respond, another voice cut in, soft but commanding. "If you're having doubts, I might be able to clear things up." Anna and I turned. Clara Brooks, Anna's mother, stood at the end of the hallway, holding her phone, her eyes sharp as if she could see through everything. Clara, in an elegant navy dress and neatly pinned silver hair, exuded a presence that demanded attention. She stepped forward, handing the phone to Anna. "Look," she said, her voice calm but firm. Anna took the phone, her fingers swiping across the screen. I couldn't see the content, but her expression shifted, from confusion to anger, then to a deep pain. Anna whispered, her voice breaking. "He texted his best friend that I'm an easy girl to fool. That all he had to do was sweet-talk Mom, and he'd control this household. Clara nodded, her voice icy. There are also messages to his stylist. Evan said a few months after the wedding, he'd make you dependent, and everything would be his. Verbatim. I stood frozen, feeling like the ground had collapsed beneath me. The Evan I knew, my brother always doted on by Mom, was worse than I'd imagined. Anna clutched the phone, her shoulders trembling. How did you get these messages? She asked. Her voice choked. Clara glanced at me, then replied, a friend of mine works at the studio of Evan's stylist. They accidentally sent me a backup file when I rescheduled a dress fitting. I read it all. Anna sank into a nearby chair, her hands covering her face, as if her world had crumbled. I stood still, unsure what to say. Part of me ached for her, but another part felt like the pieces of Evan were finally falling into place. Clara looked at me, her gaze softening. Nathan, thank you for not turning away, she said gently. I nodded, but inside, I knew I didn't need thanks. I just wanted the truth to stop being buried. I stood silently in the hallway, the air around me suddenly heavy, as if the truth about my brother, the one Mom always adored, was unraveling, sharp as a blade. Anna looked up, her eyes red but blazing with resolve. We need to address this now, she said, her voice trembling but firm. Clara nodded, her gaze razor-sharp, as if ready to face anything. Follow me, she said, leaving no room for hesitation. Then led us up the stairs to a private meeting room on the resort's second floor. It had begun, and I knew there was no turning back. The small meeting room had windows overlooking the shimmering Lake Tahoe, but the atmosphere inside was stifling. I sat at one end of a long table, hands clasped, trying to quell the anger surging within. Anna sat across, still gripping the phone, as if it were the final proof of betrayal. Clara stood behind her, a hand resting lightly on Anna's shoulder, a steady anchor. The hum of the air conditioning, mixed with the faint whistle of wind, through a cracked window. No one spoke, only a tense silence enveloping us. The door swung open, and Evan walked in, followed by Mom, Margaret Carter. Mom looked confused, her eyes darting from me to Anna to Claire. Evan, still in his sleek black tuxedo, maintained his usual confidence, but I caught a flicker of unease in his eyes. What's going on here? Evan asked, his voice slightly high, as if trying to regain control. Why is everyone dragging each other out of the wedding? Clara didn't answer immediately. She took the phone from Anna, placed it on the table, and looked straight at Evan. Do you know what this is? She asked, her voice icy. Evan glanced at the phone, but didn't move. Clara continued, her tone cutting. A request to annul the meeting. And just so you know, Anna has signed it. The room froze. Mom gasped, her hand covering her mouth. You're joking, aren't you? She whispered, her voice trembling. Evan stepped back, his lips pressed tight. You're joking, right? He asked, trying to sound calm. Clara shook her head, her voice sharp as a blade. We've read all your messages, Evan. Every word you said about Anna, about me, about this family. Undeniable. Evan opened his mouth to speak, but Clara cut him off. You called me a rich old lady who just signs checks. You told your best friend you'd control everything within 6 months of the wedding. You called Anna an easy girl to fool, just needing your sweet talk. Want me to quote more? Mom turned to Evan, her eyes frantic. Evan, is this true? She asked, her voice breaking. Evan stood still, then laughed. A forced sound. It's just a joke, Mom. Guy talk, not serious. Clara gave a bitter laugh. In contacting a divorce lawyer last month, that a joke too? I sat silently, feeling like my blood was boiling. Clara's words tore through the veil. I'd tried to ignore for years. Evan wasn't just manipulating Anna. He'd manipulated our entire family. Mom, Dad, and me. I recalled the times Mom defended Evan, the times Dad stayed silent, and the times I convinced myself it was just my brother's nature. But now it was all clear. Dad, Henry Carter, entered the room, his eyes heavy. I didn't know who called him, but his presence made the air even tenser. What's happening? He asked, looking straight at Evan. Mom shook her head, her voice weak. I don't think Evan could do this. Dad turned to Mom, his voice slow but sharp. You've never seen the truth, Margaret. You've never seen what's been happening. Then Dad turned to me, and for the first time in years, he looked me in the eyes. Nathan, he said, his voice low. I'm sorry. I was stunned, unsure how to react. Mom looked at Dad, then at me, her eyes bewildered. Evan exploded, his voice shrill. You're siding with him, the brother you've always ignored, and now you choose him over me. Anna stood, her eyes red but resolute. "Don't drag Nathan into this, Evan," she said. "This is your fault. You brought this down on yourself." She pushed the wedding ring across the table toward Evan. Her voice choked. "I can't marry you." Evan stood frozen, the first time I'd seen his usual confidence vanish. He looked at Anna, then Clara, then Mom, searching for someone to defend him. But no one spoke. I looked at Evan, not with triumph, but with an indescribable sadness. He hadn't just betrayed Anna, he'd betrayed all of us. But at the same time, I felt a strange relief, as if the truth had finally been laid bare. Clara placed a hand on Anna's shoulder, her gaze softening. "Let's go," she said. Anna nodded, walking out of the room, leaving Evan standing alone in the ruin he'd created. Clara's words, "We've read all your messages," were like a final blade, slicing through my brother's perfect facade. Mom Margaret Carter covered her face, tears streaming, while Dad, Henry Carter, looked at me with regretful eyes. The air was suffocating, as if we all knew this moment would change everything. But Evan, instead of facing it, suddenly turned, shoved the door and bolted out. Anna, Clara, Mom, Dad, and I rushed after him, no one saying a word. The door to the main banquet hall swung open, and Evan appeared amid the crowd of guests, panting, hair disheveled, eyes wild. The soft violin music stopped, laughter and chatter falling silent. Hundreds of eyes turned to Evan, once the star of the day, now looking like a man unmoored. "You think you can humiliate me like this?" he shouted, his voice echoing over the tables and glittering chandeliers. "I did everything for this day. Months of planning, picking every detail, and now, over a few texts, a few meaningless words, you want to destroy me?" No one answered. Guests exchanged confused, then stunned glances. I stood at the threshold with Anna, Clara, Mom, and Dad, feeling like I was watching a play. Evan no longer controlled. Anna stepped forward, her gown gliding across the marble floor, her eyes steady despite trembling hands. "No one's destroying you, Evan," she said, her voice clear, cutting through the silence. "You did that to yourself." Evan shook his head violently, tears streaming down his face. "You love me, Anna," he yelled. "I did all this for our future." Clara stepped forward, her stride slow but commanding. She looked at Evan, her voice cold. "I once hoped you'd be part of our family, but you didn't want to be a Brooks. You just wanted what we have." A murmur rippled through the crowd, like a wave breaking. Guests began to understand, some setting down their wine glasses, their eyes heavy. Evan scanned the hall, his breathing uneven. "She's lying," he screamed, pointing at me. "Nathan, he's always been jealous of me, always trying to drag me down. He's lived his whole life in the shadows, and now wants to pull me down with him." I stepped forward, my heart pounding, but my voice calm, loud enough for all to hear. "I don't need to drag anyone down, Evan," I said. "The truth is heavy enough." Evan fell silent, his eyes frantic. The entire hall seemed to hold its breath, every gaze fixed on him. Even those who once admired Evan, friends, colleagues, now stood silent. Evan turned to Anna, his voice trembling, clinging to a final shred of hope. "Anna, you can't leave me. I'm your husband. We made vows." Anna looked at him, her eyes both pained and resolute. She pulled a white envelope from her gown's pouch and held it up before Evan. "This is the annulment request," she said, her voice cold, "and I've signed it." The hall seemed to stop breathing. Clara placed a hand on Anna's shoulder, her gaze softening. "Let's go, dear," she said. Anna nodded, turning to leave, Clara by her side. Evan stood alone, in the center of the hall, surrounded by chandeliers and elegant gowns. Once a star, built on control and a perfect facade, he now crumbled before everyone. Mom stepped forward, tears streaming, but she said nothing, only looked at Evan with a broken gaze. Dad approached me, and for the first time, I saw him stand tall, not avoiding my eyes. "Nathan," he said softly, "I was wrong not to see you." I looked at him, my heart empty, unsure how to respond. I didn't feel victorious, only a sense of closure. I walked out of the banquet hall, leaving behind the glittering chandeliers and the heavy air of a wedding that had unraveled. The image of Evan, standing frozen amid the crowd, his face pale as Anna held up the annulment request, lingered in my mind. Dad's apology, "Nathan, I was wrong not to see you," and Mom's broken gaze were the final pieces of a painful picture. I didn't feel triumph or satisfaction. I only felt a strange relief, as if I'd stepped out from a shadow that had weighed on me for years. A week later, I returned to my small apartment in Seattle, Washington. On the 5th floor overlooking Puget Sound, the water sparkled each morning, a reminder that life goes on. My phone was filled with missed calls from Mom, Margaret Carter, and a few texts from Dad, Henry Carter. Mom wrote, "Nathan, we need to talk. I want to fix things." Dad's was brief. "I know I was wrong. Call me back, okay?" I read each message, my fingers hovering over the screen, but didn't reply. The apologies came too late, like shards that couldn't piece back the family I once longed for. I stood by the window, gazing at Puget Sound, sunlight reflecting like shattered silver. In my hand was an old family photo, taken one Christmas when I was 16. Evan stood center, beaming, Mom's hand proudly on his shoulder, while I stood back, nearly hidden behind the tree. I'd kept this photo for years, a memento of days I still hoped for a place in the family. But now, looking at it, I only saw a boy trying to be noticed. I tucked the photo into a small wooden box in a drawer, closing it gently, like closing a chapter of my life. I walked along Puget Sound one afternoon, the cool breeze carrying the scent of sea salt. Small waves lapped at the shore, and I felt a peace I'd never known before. I thought of Anna, who had emailed me a few days earlier. "Nathan," she wrote, "thank you for being there, for not turning away. I'm starting over in San Francisco, and I hope you find peace too." I smiled reading it, feeling a faint new connection, however fragile. Anna, like me, had chosen to step out from Evan's shadow, and that made me feel less alone. Sitting on a wooden bench by the water, I opened my laptop and booked a flight to Acadia National Park, Maine. It was a trip I'd always dreamed of, standing before rugged cliffs, hearing the ocean roar, but never took because of family obligations. Futile hopes that Mom and Dad would see me. As I clicked to confirm the ticket, I felt like I'd cut an invisible cord, one that had bound me to past hurts. I recalled the last time I tried to make peace with Evan, years ago, when I invited him to dinner to discuss our differences. He'd laughed at me, saying, "You'll always be a loser, Nathan. Accept it." Back then, I left the restaurant, my heart heavy. But now, sitting by Puget Sound, I realized I didn't need Evan's approval, or anyone's in the family. My worth wasn't in how they saw me, but in how I saw myself. My phone buzzed, another text from Mom. "Nathan, I'm sorry. Come home, we'll talk." I looked at the screen, my fingers tracing the words, then turned it off. I wasn't angry at Mom, Dad, or Evan. I just didn't want to return to a place I never truly belonged. I stood, breathed in the sea air, and walked on, feeling like I finally belonged to myself. I stood on a rugged cliff at Acadia National Park, Maine, waves crashing below, the salty wind whipping through my hair. Before me was the vast blue ocean, stretching endlessly, like a promise of new beginnings. After everything, the shattered wedding at Crystal Lake Resort, Evan's hurtful word, Mom's indifference, and Dad's belated apology, I had come here, not to escape, but to find myself. The old family photo, where I stood hidden behind the tree, now rested in a wooden box in my Seattle apartment, no longer a burden of the past. My phone buzzed again. I pulled it out, seeing Dad's name, Henry Carter, on the screen. I hesitated, then answered. "Nathan," his voice was low and sincere, unlike the man who once stayed silent amid Mom's favoritism. "I was wrong not to see you. I want to make it right." I looked out at the sea, waves crashing against rocks, and replied softly, "I don't need apologies anymore, Dad. I just need to live my life." I wasn't angry, only at peace, as if I'd finally let go of the expectations that once bound me. I pocketed the phone, sat on a large rock, and pulled out a new journal. I began to write, not about Evan, Mom, or Dad, but about me, my dreams, my fears, and the strength I found in walking away from family. I wrote about the day I stood in the hallway, the place card like a blade, but also the day I began to see my own worth. Family, I realized, isn't just those tied by blood, but those who respect and hear you. A local passed by, offering a friendly smile. "Beautiful, isn't it?" he said, gesturing to the sea. I nodded, smiling back. The brief, simple exchange made me feel connected, like a new beginning. I stood, breathed in the sea air, and looked to the horizon. I walked on, my heart light, knowing that from here, I would live for myself. The story of Nathan Carter and at my brother's wedding. I was seated in the hallway, so I left. What happened next shocked everyone, reflects real issues in American society today, particularly family pressures, favoritism, and the journey to find self-worth in a culture that champions individuality, but sometimes overlooks invisible wounds. Nathan, a software engineer in Seattle, was seated in the hallway at his brother Evan's wedding in Lake Tahoe, a symbol of estrangement and lack of recognition. The memory of his mother's letterbox, documenting only Evan's moments, and none of Nathan's, mirrors familial favoritism, a common phenomenon in America, where parents sometimes unintentionally favor one child, leaving another feeling invisible. Evan's manipulation of Anna and the Brooks family for control of wealth reflects a culture of competition and materialism, where success is sometimes prized over sincerity. Nathan's journey, from confronting the truth in the banquet hall to finding peace at Acadia National Park, shows the power of leaving toxic environments, a theme that resonates with many Americans struggling to balance family obligations and personal happiness. In today's American society, where individualized culture encourages self-assertion, it takes courage to set boundaries with toxic relationships, even family. Learn from Nathan. When sidelined like in a hallway, don't accept it. Instead, face the truth as he did with Evan, and find a healing space like Acadia to redefine your self-worth. Write your own journal, whether through therapy, writing, or talking with friends, to understand that your value doesn't depend on others' recognition, but on how you respect yourself. Subscribe to the channel to follow journeys of rediscovering self-worth like Nathan Carter and explore more inspiring stories. Thank you for joining. See you in the next video.